In the years before the Second World War, the world's oceans were crowded with ships that carried empires, commerce, and influence. The Royal Navy maintained squadrons from the Caribbean to the Pacific, guarding trade routes and protecting distant outposts across a world so vast that the sun never truly set on the British Empire. It was an empire held together by steel and steam, by ships that carried not only guns, but presence and power. One such ship was HMS Ajax, a Leander-class light cruiser launched in 1934 and completed in 1935. She was finely balanced for the tasks a cruiser must perform: scouting, hunting, protecting convoys, and where necessary, taking the fight to the enemy. Ajax was a ship of 8 6-inch guns, protective armor, and a design that combined speed with endurance, and like many cruisers she earned her reputation by sailing straight into the heart of the action, where the fighting was fiercest. Ajax's first great moment came in a cold December morning in 1939, off the River Plate in South America. The scene that day belonged to a different age, a drama played out across a glassy sea and under an uncertain sky. The object of the hunt was the German pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee, a commerce raider that had been stalking merchant traffic in the South Atlantic and Indian Oceans, sinking convoy ships and slipping away before heavier forces could reach her. To hunt the raider, the Admiralty assembled a small cruiser force, designated Force G, comprising the heavy cruiser HMS Exeter, and 2 light cruisers, HMS Ajax and HMNZS Achilles, the latter serving with the New Zealand Division. The squadron's commander was Commodore Henry Harwood, who chose to make Ajax his flagship. Her captain at that time was Captain Charles H.L. Woodhouse, an experienced officer who took the sea seriously and prepared his crew for the strain ahead. On the morning of December 13, 1939, the British squadron sighted smoke on the horizon. The contacts grew into a single silhouette on the water, the heavy and menacing outline of Admiral Graf Spee. What followed was the famous Battle of the River Plate, the first major naval engagement of the Second World War. Ajax and Achilles, lighter and more maneuverable, closed on the German ship, while Exeter, a heavier vessel with fewer 8-inch guns, drew fire and took the brunt of Graf Spee's broadsides. Commodore Harwood's plan was deliberate and daring, a textbook execution of cruiser tactics that sought to divide the enemy's fire by attacking from more than one direction. The idea was not to outgun the pocket battleship, but to complicate her aiming and to impose a fighting choice on her captain. The fight was fierce and costly. Exeter suffered grievous damage, her bridge hit and her speed reduced. Ajax and Achilles were struck too, but their lighter draft and agility kept them in the fight. Ajax took several hits that disabled some turrets and caused casualties among her crew, yet she continued to shadow Graf Spee as the battle became a pursuit, rather than a simple exchange of broadsides. As smoke poured from the German raider, she turned away to the southwest, making for the mouth of the River Plate. Harwood's ships pressed the chase, maintaining contact through gun flashes and smoke as the range widened. Though low on ammunition and with battle damage mounting, Ajax and Achilles refused to break off. The pursuit carried on through the afternoon, across rolling seas streaked with oil and debris. By dusk, Graf Spee's fuel reserves were running dangerously low, and her engine strained. Her captain sought refuge in the nearest neutral harbor. When Graf Spee limped into the neutral port of Montevideo in Uruguay, she was damaged, and her captain faced a dilemma. Over the next 2 days a psychological battle played out, in which the German commander weighed his options against perceived odds and diplomatic pressure. Facing the prospect of a superior force waiting outside, and short of fuel and options for repair, Captain Hans Langsdorff ordered Admiral Graf Spee to be scuttled rather than risk his crew in a final, hopeless battle. That act ended the threat the raider posed, and in many ways it marked a strategic success for Harwood's squadron, and for Ajax in particular. Ajax's action that day did more than sink a raider. It sent a message that Royal Navy cruisers could hunt and corner a foe in distant waters, that careful tactics and tenacity could blunt a heavier weapon. The names Harwood, Woodhouse, Ajax, and Achilles entered a catalogue of deeds that the fleet would remember. After the River Plate, Ajax's war was still far from over. The cruiser was redeployed to theaters that required such a ship of endurance and versatility. She was sent to the Mediterranean, where the struggle for the island of Malta, for Greece, and for North Africa would demand ships that could escort convoys, shell shore positions, and face enemy air power. In March and April of 1941, HMS Ajax took part in one of the Royal Navy's most decisive Mediterranean engagements, the Battle of Cape Matapan. Alongside the larger fleet under Admiral Cunningham, Ajax helped intercept an Italian squadron, engaging enemy cruisers and destroyers. Using coordinated gunfire and the cover of night, the British fleet inflicted devastating losses, sinking several Italian warships and forcing others to retreat. Ajax's role in this battle demonstrated her versatility, not just as a hunter of raiders like Graf Spee, but as a frontline combatant in fleet actions against modern navies. Ajax helped cover convoys to embattled Malta, took part in the fight around Crete, and supported operations against Axis convoys supplying North Africa. The Mediterranean was a different crucible from the South Atlantic. Air power dominated, and ships had to survive dive bombers and torpedo attacks while still delivering guns on target. Ajax met this test, but not without cost. Her decks were scarred by enemy shells and bombs, and her company of sailors grew hardened by nights under air attack and days at sea, steaming from port to port in an ocean that had turned into a battlefield. The ship earned battle honors for her work, and her name became linked to the broader struggle of maintaining supply lines to Allied forces in the Mediterranean. Later in the war, Ajax returned to home waters after a refit. Her anti-aircraft defenses improved, and with new radar systems fitted, upgrades that reflected just how the war had evolved and how ships had to change to survive. By 1944, Ajax was part of the armada that would assault Nazi-held Europe. She took part in the bombardment duties supporting the D-Day landings, laying shells into coastal defenses on Gold Beach and silencing batteries that threatened the landing troops. Cruisers like Ajax were essential in preparing the beach approaches and in providing continuous fire support as the invasion unfolded. She later supported the landings in southern France, again demonstrating the cruiser's unique capacity to move where needed and deliver heavy firepower in support of ground operations. But beyond battles and campaigns, the story of Ajax is also one of sailors, a ship, and the institution that service forged. The crew's life aboard a cruiser in wartime was routine and terror in equal measure. When not at action stations, the crew mended sails, checked boilers, and kept the mighty guns clean. When action came, they trusted the drill that had been practiced, and they trusted the men beside them and the vessel they cared for. Ajax's company ranged from seasoned petty officers to young ratings seeing their first battle, all bound by the same duty to their ship and flag. In the final winter of the war, HMS Ajax carried not guns into battle, but a statesman. In December 1944, Prime Minister Winston Churchill came aboard to sail for Greece, where civil unrest threatened to unravel the fragile peace. Captain Charles Cuthbert, mindful of his passengers' importance, remarked, "I hope, sir, that while you are with us, we shan't have to open fire. But if we are asked to give supporting fire, I must do so." Churchill smiled, ever the soldier and the showman. "Pray remember, Captain," he replied, "that I came here as a cooing dove of peace, bearing a sprig of mistletoe in my beak. But far be it from me to stand in the way of military necessity." It was a moment that captured both men perfectly, the professional sailors of Ajax bound by duty, and a great wartime leader who understood that peace often arrived only in the shadow of war. There was a certain irony at the end of Ajax's wartime voyage. After her great battles, Ajax was used in a small, symbolic task that closed a circle. She transported the very same German sailors back from Montevideo, men who had served on Admiral Graf Spee, the very same ship Ajax had helped hunt in 1939. The sight of those weary sailors returning home aboard the very ship once sent to hunt them remains one of the greatest ironies of naval history, a moment both haunting and unforgettable. Ajax continued to serve after the war, taking part in the difficult, often thankless policing duties the fleet was asked to perform during the post-war years. She took part in the Royal Navy's Palestine Patrol, which tried to intercept ships carrying illegal immigrants in the troubled months before the creation of Israel. Ships designed for war found themselves doing the work of peacekeeping, repatriation, and presence, tasks that required the same seamanship, but demanded different rules of engagement and different kinds of patience. She displaced around 7,000-ton standard, was capable of more than 30 knots, and carried 8 6-inch guns in 4 twin turrets. Her machinery gave her reach across oceans, and her structure allowed modifications over time as the realities of war demanded better anti-aircraft systems and radar. In carrier and battleship age debates, cruisers like Ajax sometimes sit in the shadows, but they remained among the most flexible combatants a navy could deploy. Her wartime record won her a string of battle honors and the proud, if understated, respect of sailors. Ajax's name would be remembered in port cities, memorials, and even place names overseas. In Canada, the town of Ajax in Ontario was named in honor of the cruiser's deeds, a reminder that ships and deeds at sea touch communities far from the waves. In the museum collections and the memorial books, Ajax's actions are recorded with the precision of logs and the warmth of oral memory. Photographs show her painted hull, the imposing twin turrets, and the men in heavy greatcoats clinging to the rails against the salt spray that freezes as it falls. Books recount the maneuvers, the damaged turrets, the extinguished fires, and the harrowing days of convoy escort under one of history's most relentless air and sea campaigns. Yet for all the metal and machine, Ajax's story is ultimately about people. The sailors who manned her lived under the same uncertain sky as the merchant crews they protected. They ate, cleaned, repaired, and repaired again. They fought, and they fought again. They mourned their dead. And when the guns fell silent, they still had to return home, to write letters, to remake lives that had been interrupted by service. HMS Ajax did what cruisers did best. She found the enemy, she forced hard choices, she took hits and kept fighting. From the South Atlantic to the Mediterranean, from the River Plate to the beaches of Normandy, Ajax was present at some of the decisive naval moments of the Second World War. Her name stands now among those ships whose service defined the Royal Navy's role in the conflict, not always the headline vessel, but a constant, mobile, and reliable instrument of policy and war. When you look back at the story of the River Plate, at the long minutes that turned on a gunnery duel and careful maneuvering, you see how a light cruiser can help bend the course of events. And when you think of the Mediterranean and the convoys of 1940 to 1943, you see how ships like Ajax kept the lifelines of nations open. Ajax sailed on, refitted and reused, until the time came when the age of that class was over. Before we end, we'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about our second channel, Skies of War. There, we review iconic warplanes from history, exploring their design and battles. If you enjoyed this video, head over to Skies of War, and check out our feature on the Hawker Hurricane, one of the most famous fighters of the Second World War. Don't forget to subscribe to both channels, it's free and helps us grow, and share these amazing stories.